The courtroom was a cathedral of chrome and light where memories were currency and truth was whatever the city's architects allowed it to be. Rows of watchers, some flesh, some purely projection, leaned forward as the accused stood silent on the stand. Nova felt the stutter before she saw it, a ripple through the air like a glitch in a vast simulation. For an instant, every face in the room convulsed into someone else. The prosecutor became a lover she'd once lost in a rooftop fire. Hidden in the swarm of observers was Kale, the only gene-pure ally she trusted. His dark coat bore no digital texture. It was fabric from the old districts, worn soft by rain that never fell here anymore. His gaze told her the glitch wasn't an accident. Their illegal neural bridge, built from scavenged circuits and outlaw code, was leaking into the citywide net. Outside the court's core, the neon megacity seethed with data storms. Tower spires shimmered with corporate slogans that rewrote themselves mid-scroll to reflect the engineers' latest truth updates. Somewhere among them, the city's reality engineers were patching the stutter, reshaping memories so the glitch would register as nothing more than a passing mistake. Once their revisions settled, the lovers she had imagined would never have existed in anyone's mind. Nova fought the urge to reach for the hidden shard of bridge hardware strapped just beneath her collarbone. Not here, not in the trial. The bridge, if activated fully, could create empathy synapses between entire blocks of citizens, but it blurred identities until they dissolved into shared cognition. It was blunt force evolution. Beautiful and dangerous, Kale's voice grazed her ear through the localized whisper band. "They've seen the leak. We have minutes." His words were flat, but his pulse, a flicker broadcast through the bridge link, hammered urgent panic into her mind. She remembered the first time they'd tested it, leaning against each other in a basement stale with circuitry heat. Every thought Kale had became hers. Every memory she touched rewrote itself into his. They had laughed, then screamed, as their selves began to slide away like data fragments falling into corrupted storage. Now, in the core's judgment temple, the engineers' authority swelled across the glass walls, rippling advertisements dissolving into warm declarations of corporate loyalty. "Unity is truth," the glowing letters proclaimed. Adapting to match the lives people thought they'd lived but never had, somewhere in those shifting recollections lay the choice that could not be undone: sever the bridge forever, or surrender herself to the collective mind, so completely that she would vanish, yet remain. Kale's eyes locked with hers. The room began to stutter again, this time slower, as if time itself were reluctant to move forward, peeling back its layered seconds to expose something beneath. A faint pressure built at Kale's temples, subtle at first, then sharp, like a thin blade prying open a sealed door in his mind. Leora's breath caught in her throat. Her pupils widened, swallowing the pale green of her irises until they were nearly black, reflecting him back in miniature. Dust motes that had been drifting lazily in the amber light seemed to freeze midair, caught in a syrupy suspension. Kale's heartbeats slowed, each thump stretching into drawn-out beats that resonated against the stillness. "What are you doing?" His voice sounded thick, almost muffled, as though he spoke through water. "I'm finding you in here," Leora murmured, her tone fragile but unwavering. "Not just the part the Institute thinks it owns. The rest of you." Her hands hovered inches from his temples, never quite touching. The air between was charged. Humming faintly, the stutter in the room shifted to a rolling pulse, like the space around them breathed once. Kale swallowed hard. "This isn't. The mesh implants don't work like this." "They don't," she agreed softly. "But there's something older in you, deeper. I can't see it all yet. I need you to stand very still." He did, or tried to, yet his knees felt light, unsteady under him. His thoughts fuzzed, then sharpened, like a lens trying desperately to focus. Leora stood on the glass causeway as well, her bare feet pale against the shimmering, impossible surface. She was smiling faintly, but the corners of her mouth trembled. "I think this is you," she said, voice echoing in the infinite expanse. "Or something inside you, and it's breaking. She gestured to the fissures that spidered outward from their feet across the glass. With each pulse, the fractures deepened, chunks trembling as though ready to fall into the abyss below. Kale's gaze darted to the far horizon, though here, there was no true horizon, just a curve of stars curled into spiraling clouds that barely moved. He felt a weight there, something pulling at him. How is this here? He had to shout against wind that wasn't real, his words torn and scattered. It isn't exactly here, she replied. It's where the rest of you exists when they aren't looking, before the memories were rewritten, before the war. The words slid into Kale's mind like a hook. Images flickered, smoke rising over orange deserts, machine towers collapsing into dust. A great river churned to black oil. He staggered, clutching his head as the visions jagged into focus. Stop, he whispered, though some part of him wanted more, always more. Leora's expression tightened, not in cruelty, but urgency. If you pull back now, you'll never understand why they took your name. He swayed, eyes snapping onto hers. My name's Kale. The statement hung in the split space like a child's game piece, a claim that felt brittle as spun glass. Pieces of another name, syllables he could not shape, trembled just beyond his reach. The glass beneath them tremored violently. Leora stepped closer, planting her palms against his chest, not pushing, not holding, just grounding. They will come for you soon, she said. If they see what I see, they'll try to cut it out of you. The fissures spread as though trying to swallow her words. Somewhere, far beyond sight, yet unbearably near, Kale sensed motion like massive wings unfolding in the dark. He forced himself to breathe evenly. Then show me all of it now. She hesitated. If I do, we might not come back. The wind intensified, filling his ears with roaring static. We don't have a choice. Leora's hands rose once more, hovering beside his face. The air between them surged with tiny arcs of pale blue lightning. Then, with a breath that was half prayer, she pressed both palms to his temples. The fractured causeway shattered instantly. Kale plunged, the cold biting in from every direction, though no splash came, no impact at all. He plummeted, through layers of memory peeled back like sheets of burning paper. Cries echoed somewhere to his left, human, mechanical, impossible to separate. He saw himself scaled higher than buildings, armed with weapons that unfurled from his own skin, lances of black metal steaming where they met daylit air. Streams of coded symbols bled across the darkness, coiling through images of lifetimes he did not remember living. A city collapsed under his gaze, his hands these towering. Alien hands closed on a machine, heart the size of a tanker ship, and tore it free, spilling out acrid smoke. The ocean vanished. He slammed once again into the lab floor, knees buckling, palms skittering across the cold. Her skin glistened like moonlit glass, and her eyes were wide and wet. Now you understand why they built the Institute. Kale's voice was hoarse. They weren't built to research us. They were built to cage us. Even as the words left his mouth, the lab's lights flickered violently, pitching into a deep, unnatural red. A siren wailed once, a half-finished note before dying into silence. Leora's head whipped toward the door. They saw too much. Who? The Watchers. Footsteps began pounding the corridor outside, fast, synchronized, the rhythm of trained enforcers. Kale rose, his muscles thrumming with adrenaline, or perhaps with something older, something newly awake in him. That same hum from the causeway alive now in his bones. The first shadow fell across the threshold. Leora's fingers brushed his wrist. If you run now, don't stop until you find the black gates. Before he could ask, the door blew inward. Figures in matte armor poured in, faces hidden in reflective masks. Kale felt the pressure in his skull spike, an electric bloom unfurling outward. Around him, gravity seemed not wholly certain of its loyalties anymore. One of the armored figures shouted, "Target acquired," and then their voice warped, stretching into an elastic howl as the tiles buckled upward under a sudden force that came from Kale's outstretched hand. The wave ripped through the corridor as though the floor itself had decided to remember it was once molten stone. The tiles bulged, cracked and detonated upward into jagged shards that tore free in a spiraling cyclone. The blast hurled the armored figures into the walls, their suits groaning under the strain as they scraped and gouged steel. One bent backward in midair, limbs flailing, helmet visor flickering with a desperate pulsing red before they slammed hard enough into the far bulkhead to dent it. Kale lowered his palm slowly, fingers curling. His breath came in hard bursts, but his eyes, those strange silver-crossed irises, burned with focus. The corridor's emergency lights flickered in overlapping rhythm with his pulse. Dust hung motionless in places, frozen in tiny spheres, while other clusters raced away giddily, as if certain they now served some other master besides gravity. He could feel the bleed through again, the loosening between what was real and what lived in the folds outside of reality. The armored figures weren't human, not entirely. They carried that same faint distortion along their outlines, a shimmer like heat over metal. Another rose from the floor, slow and deliberate, as if the wreck around them were only an inconvenient change in. Absurd stuff swirled around Kale, segments of floor tile rotating in air like planets, motes of dust and sparks tracing spirals that refused gravity's pull. "Kale," she began, but one of the armored intruders pivoted toward her, arm lifting, palm turning in slow rehearsal toward release. A long T. The air was saturated with the metallic tang of ozone, and the hum of the reactors beneath the city had grown to a low, almost impatient growl. Leora could feel it through her boots as she sprinted down the narrow transit corridor, Kai a step behind, the flicker of emergency luminescence painting shadows that moved unnaturally along the walls. Up ahead, the bulkhead leading to sublevel Gamma loomed. Its control panel glowed weakly, the interface struggling to stay responsive under the strain on the grid. Leora slapped her palm against the reader, praying the old identification algorithms still recognized her. For a breathless second, nothing happened. Then the seals hissed, the doors retracting with a reluctant clank. Beyond them stretched Gamma's main artery, a broad conduit lined with dormant cargo trams. The space reeked of rust and ancient lubricants, the scent so strong it felt like it coated her tongue, yet threaded through it was another smell, something clean, crisp, impossible here, like air after a rainstorm. Leora slowed, instinct prickling. Kai's voice was a hushed warning. "You smell it too?" "I do." She glanced at the ceiling, where the dull metal was etched with intricate grooves, old sensor ports from before the city went underground entirely. They were powered now, faintly glowing with a cold blue light. It shouldn't be possible. She didn't need to guess whose doing it was. It was them, the mind behind the transmissions, the entities lurking beyond the fragment, the ones shaping this whole sequence of events. They followed the conduit deeper, until the tram line came to an abrupt gap, an expanse where the floor sagged away into a yawning chasm. The edges were jagged, twisted into unnatural angles, as though wrenched apart by something other than gravity or tectonics. Far below, a luminous mist swirled in slow spirals, giving the void an almost liquid texture. Kai crouched, running a light down the edges. The collapse wasn't physical. It's been rewritten. Rewritten? Leora barely whispered it. Reality here is edited. The materials exist, but they don't remember how they were shaped. It's the fragment's influence bleeding in. Leora stared across the gap, where the conduit resumed. The section seemed to shimmer faintly. Not quite solid, like a mirage in the desert, and standing just at its edge was a figure. The figure was tall, draped in layers of tattered interface cloth, ancient operating fabric from the city's early control rooms. Its face was hidden behind a mask of polished ceramic, segmented in concentric rings. It did not move, yet Leora felt its gaze on her. Kai rose slowly. That's not a projection. When the voice came, it wasn't through the air. It was inside their skulls, calm, unhurried. You are far from where you began. Each word carried a gravity that pressed against her mind. Leora fought to stay grounded in herself. "What are you?" she demanded. The figure's head inclined slightly. One who remained when others fled. one who saw the fragment's arrival and refused erasure. Kai stepped forward, but the chasm held him back. You're connected to the thing that's been rewriting the city. Connected, the figure agreed, but not as you think. The fragment is not a single entity. It is a cascade, a network woven through possibility. It doesn't destroy, it trades one truth for another. Leora felt the words slide into her memory like hooks. You're saying it can choose outcomes, and it's choosing now. The figure's mask gleamed from within, faint threads of light snaking out and fading into the mist. It is choosing constantly. Every second you remain, you feed it data, your reactions, your choices. It grows from the sum of all it observes. The hum underfoot intensified. This deep, insistent vibration that made her teeth ache. If we don't stop it, she began. You will not stop it, but you may guide it. Kai's expression was sharp, skeptical, but his voice rasped. Then tell us how. The figure extended one hand over the chasm. In its palm rested a small device, no bigger than Leora's thumb, constructed of braided silver threads and a central black sphere. This will allow you to speak to the fragment not in your words, but in structures it understands. She reached for it. The air between their hands shimmered, disturbed by threads of blue light, and when she closed her fingers around the object, she felt its weight in ways that were not physical, its geometry vibrating against her perception. The figure spoke again, voice quiet and immutable. When the structure completes, it will ask you a question. Whatever you answer will become the truth here. Be prepared to live in the world that follows. Leora met its masked gaze. And what happens to you? The figure was silent for a long moment. I returned to memory. Then it turned and stepped back into the shimmering conduit until it faded utterly away. For a beat, neither she nor Kai moved. Then Kai exhaled sharply. We need a way across. The chasm was no ordinary hazard. She could feel the distortion tugging at her muscles and thoughts, pulling them into uncertainty. But the cargo trams. Leora turned, scanning the line. One, further back, was still powered faintly. With careful coaxing from Kai's toolkit, its magnetic rails hummed to life. They directed it toward the edge of the gap, setting it to build momentum. The tram's security tie-downs, worn but intact, served as anchors for a cable. With a final jolt, they launched the tram across. It arced, reality seeming to warp mid-flight, and crashed into the far side with a shriek of stressed metal. One of the tie-downs snapped, but the cable held. Moving quickly, they traversed the cable, their bodies swaying over the luminous mist, until their feet touched the far conduit. Leora's heartbeat took seconds to normalize. Up ahead, the corridor widened into a chamber that thrummed with layered sound, part mechanical, part indescribable. The walls here were translucent, revealing shifting silhouettes within, like figures pacing inside parallel hallways that were just beyond reach. At the chamber's center rested a structure unlike anything she had seen, a column of hovering segments, each rotating slowly, held apart by arcs of light. Embedded deep inside was a node pulsing with the same darkness as the sphere she now carried. She knew instinctively this was the interface, the place where the fragment's processes crossed into human space. Kai paced around it, scanning. It's listening, he murmured. Even now. Leora pressed the sphere into the column's surface. The segments shivered, the rotation accelerating. A sharp tone pierced the air, and then everything around them became still deep, prelude to something still. Then the question came, not in voice, but in her mind, formed perfectly without language. What world will you choose? Images cascaded through her consciousness. The city above restored to sunlight. The ocean calm and pure. The streets full of living motion. Then other visions. Strange, golden skies threaded with enormous structures, humans walking alongside faceted beings of light, technology and biology indistinguishable. It wasn't a request for command, it was an offering. One reality would spread from here. Kai's eyes met hers. He wasn't seeing what she was, but something equally vast. Don't choose for me, he said quietly. We should choose together. She almost said yes without hesitation. But then she thought of the masked figure's warning. Be prepared to live in the world that follows. Then tell me what you see, she said, Kyle's gaze focused inward. I see a place we haven't made mistakes yet. We get to start again, but we know what went wrong last time. It was tempting clean slate, no scars, but Leora's vision fought for dominance. I see survival, continuity, not erasing what we were, just fixing the parts broken beyond bearing. The pressure in her mind grew. The fragment was listening, weighing their divergence. Kai took a step closer. Is there a middle ground? Yes, she realized. The choice didn't have to be binary. They could choose synthesis, repair and renewal while keeping memory intact. With singular clarity, they locked that thought together, feeding it to the sphere, to the node, to whatever lay beyond their perception. The stomas shattered, the column burst with light. Its translucent walls igniting in crystalline patterns, rooms upon rooms unfolding like a flower. The hum of the reactors fell away, replaced by the sound of wind. Real wind. They staggered back as the chamber's walls dissolved entirely, revealing the city, only it wasn't the dying arcology they had known. Over their heads stretched a sky the color of deep twilight, lit by structures that floated like anchored stars. Below, streets lay open to the air, but the people there wore the same mixed fabrics of old and new. The old ruins stood alongside sleek growths of alloy and vine. An announcement echoed faintly from somewhere, a language both familiar and alien. Children laughed, and everywhere, the light had the same clean clarity as the scent she'd caught before in Gamma's corridor. It swept through her, thick with renewal. Kai looked at her, eyes wide in disbelief. We did it. She didn't answer at first, because deep inside her mind, a faint echo remained. The choice is made. The cascade continues, and she knew they hadn't ended the fragment at all, only steered it. For now, around them, people looked up at the strange figures who had walked out of nowhere. Someone ran forward, a young girl holding an artifact that glowed faintly, just like the one in Leora's hand. The cycle wasn't broken, it was beginning anew. Days later, they stood at the edge of the northern district, watching the wind carry seed pods from rebuilt gardens across rooftops. Kai had taken to mapping the changed zones, noting where physical laws faltered just slightly, undercurrents of the fragment at work. Leora had been meeting with the council that sprang up seemingly overnight, learning what had shifted in people's histories during the transition. Entire events remembered differently, relationships rewritten without malice, just as part of the new weave. That masked figure gave us the sphere, Kai said softly one evening, as they stood where the rebuilt transit bridge spanned a canyon below the city. Do you think they exist here after the change? Leora considered it, scanning the far banks, seeing flickers of movement just beyond ordinary sight. I think they're watching, waiting for us to choose again. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder. The air was worn. The sky above churned in seamless gradients. The future was malleable now, and it wouldn't wait forever. So, he murmured, when it asks next, what will you say? She smiled faintly. I'll decide when I know enough to make it worth answering. And together, they turned back toward the living city, its lights pulsing softly as though breathing in sync with the invisible network that tied every stone, every garden, every thought into a single evolving design. Somewhere deep beneath them, the fragment listened.